What's up, YouTube? This is your girl Megan. Welcome back to the Hood Astro Queen. Okay, I hope you guys had a very relaxed, happy 420. For those of y'all who don't indulge in the herb, hope you had an amazing Saturday anyway. Okay, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome, welcome. If this is your first time joining me on today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now because you want to. So first off, I don't do tarot readings. I got a couple people messaging me inquiring about tarot readings, and I don't do those. So I kind of just want to put that out there. However, I know an amazing tarot reader who goes by the name of LiveWLiyah. I'm going to link her channel down below. She's a YouTuber, and I mean a pretty big YouTuber at that. Well, she's definitely getting there, and she's bomb. Like she has a really bomb personality. She's very perceptive, very intuitive. And I think the readings are $10. So y'all go and hit her up for a bomb ass reading. I promise you won't regret it. Okay. So in spirit of 420, I'm going to do a reading that I have gotten like a request for, but I just never gotten around to actually doing it up until now because I just feel like it's appropriate. Okay, so I want to break down the birth chart of Alpa Martinez, or it's Alpo Martinez, and he's basically the guy who was played by Cameron in Paid from Full. Okay, that movie was created out of a real life story. So Alpo in real life, and I also believe in the movie, killed his friend over some drugs, basically. And really betrayed his friend, and it was just a whole lot going on. He and his friends were in the dope game in Harlem back in the day, like in the 80s, right? So, and he ended up getting a lot of time in prison. I'm not sure if he's still in prison to this day. However, I can understand why he would be a very, interesting person to see what all he's working with, you know what I'm saying, in his chart. And spill this cosmic tea. Okay, so I'm going to read this Wikipedia article, and then we can go ahead and get started on his chart. So it says Alberto Geddes Martinez was born June 8th, 1966 in Harlem, New York City. Better known as Alpo Martinez, is a former Puerto Rican drug dealer who is currently living under the Witness Protection Program. Sheesh. Martinez started selling drugs as early as 13 in East Harlem when he met West Side Harlem drug dealer Faison. Alpo started to move up the chain of drug dealers in Harlem and eventually became one of the biggest drug dealers in NYC. He later moved to Washington, D.C. to expand operations, where he quickly became involved in the city's underworld and elevated his drug activities. He met Wayne Silk Perry, a notorious gangster and DC enforcer. Lord, I'm talking about the Democratic Party, who would later become his bodyguard and hitman. With Perry by his side, Alpo garnered even more respect from his street competitors and became greatly feared in the D.C. area. On January 3rd, 1990, Martinez and an accomplice named Big Head Gary, aka Lil Gary, set up and murdered Rich Porter. Now, this is the guy who was played by Mekhi Phifer, who was Alpo's friend and business partner in the Bronx, New York. Martinez and Porter had previously been associates who sold drugs together. Alpo murdered Porter for lying about the price of the bricks that they were buying for a joint connection. Finding out his business partner burnt him for a few $100,000, Alpo felt it was necessary to end their relationship along with taking Porter's life. It was later discovered that Porter risked getting on Alpo's bad side due to his brother Donnell being kidnapped by unknown assailants. And those were, I think they ended up being his uncle, if y'all seen the movie. So, yeah. Porter was desperate to raise cash to pay the bribe and have his brothers return safe. Later on in D.C., Martinez got a word that little Gary, I'm not saying little Gary, I'm sorry. It's something is very comical about that, was gossiping about a large drug deal while in prison. Lil Gary, little Gary was lured into a car and shot in the head with a revolver, killing him. Gary's body defecated in the car, and the smell was such that Alpo and Wayne found the nearest park to drop the body. They dragged Gary's body into a park where it was discovered the next day. Later in life, Alpo Martinez apologized to the Porter family for murdering Rich Porter. So with him being born June 8th, 1966, in Harlem, New York, this would make him a Gemini Sun Aquarius Moon. And to be honest, it seems very fitting to me. Definitely with that Gemini Sun. Gemini is governed by Mercury, and Gemini can be a very cunning and like mental master manipulator kind of sign, right? Mental activity is represented with Mercury. So these people can be very much like intelligent as fuck, if you really want to be honest. And with them being a mutable sign, mutable signs are some of the most like notorious for violence. Just because, and I was told this, and I thought this was a great analogy, mutable signs are like the runaway trains of the zodiac. So unlike your fixed signs who can exist within their own essence and can keep steady to their own state of being, and the more cardinal signs, right? The signs that start or that initiate the beginning of each season, like your Aries, or even like Cancer, who's able to initiate and direct and start new ways of being, right? Starting new energy. Mutable signs kind of adapt to whatever the fuck is going on at the time, be it negative, be it positive, and they don't have anything to like balance them out, okay? And that's what makes people get caught up in the nature, overly consumed in whatever nature that they're in at the moment. And this makes, for very like flexible people, very easygoing, adaptable people, but it can also make for people who can fucking snap, and snap in the strongest sense of the word, okay? I saw a list, and I always bring this up, a list with serial killers, like 60 serial killers on it, y'all, and literally every single one was a mutable sign. Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, or Pisces, period. Okay? So with that being said, Geminis are prone to extreme and sudden violence. And then just that manipulation thing, that's a dark-sided Gemini trait. The double side, the two-facedness that it would take to do something like killing a business partner or killing associates and the people around you. Geminis can actually be very immoral. That's a dark-sided Gemini trait. And lying without remorse, you know, talking out of both sides of your neck, being fake, all of those are dark-sided Gemini quality. So I can absolutely see him being a very shady character from the get-go. And this is compounded by the fact that his sun is conjoined to the fixed star Rigel, okay? And this deals with somebody who is bold, who has a bad temper, who can jump to act, you know, think irrationally, make a lot of enemies, somebody who can be just a straight up, like, immoral, cruel, deviant individual, just off the chain, emotionally irresponsible, and really a liability, but they can get away with it until they let their guards down or until they do something foolish, okay? And at that point, these people will fall from success. So I thought that that was very, very telling. His sun is squaring his Pluto, which is in the sign of Virgo, and this can deal with somebody who is very controlling, very manipulative, somebody who craves power and authority. And in many ways, this could absolutely signify like the profile of a drug dealer. Very controlling about their images. Sun square Pluto people are. They're very tight-lipped. You know, Pluto is the co-ruler of Scorpio. So it carries that Scorpion energy signature, right? Being very much power driven, intense kind of presence. Everything is a power struggle. Everything is a power play. And when you look at the way that a lot of like major drug dealers and cartels, like the way that their businesses were run, it's all about power, right? It's all about who can make the most money, who can run this turf, and then, if I could do business with people who rule other turfs in neighboring areas, right? And shit, if I don't like how this person is moving, I can just take his shit, right? Power struggles. And then that Pluto and Virgo can absolutely produce somebody who makes money off of either death, which, I mean, arguably is a huge part of drug dealing, the drug game. Somebody who regularly makes money off of sex, and somebody who can absolutely be involved in criminal activity. Pluto is all about criminal activity. Scorpio is the sign of criminal activity. So, and militaristic tendencies. Like Virgo is one of the signs of the military. And I thought that was kind of interesting because a lot of drug cartels and a lot of major drug dealers run their teams in a very similar fashion. When you think about it, like, I mean, drug cartels go to war, they do all kinds of stuff. So it is a very kind of militaristic kind of setting when you're talking about somebody who was like a major drug dealer. And Sun Pluto people, particularly with the harsher aspects, so the opposition and the squares, and sometimes even the conjunctions, they tend to experience a lot of shit. These are people who probably don't have the easiest of lives. More than likely, there is some type of trauma associated with the father, as the sun does represent the father. There is some type of theme of like death, rebirth. Because all of these, Scorpio is the natural ruler of the 8th house. So they encompass a lot of those 8th house principles and themes. Even if it's not literal death, I mean, and it could be literal death, because a lot of Sun Pluto people have a lot of like very close encounters with death. Or they could have been the type of people who were surrounded by death. But they all usually experience very distinct principles of the 8th house, as Scorpio does rule the 8th house. So death and transformation, things ending and things beginning, usually in a very chaotic way, in a very disruptive way. These people have a lot going on, okay? And as a result, they can be very forceful, aggressive personalities. Some people can even be abusive, like I said, with the harsher aspects between the sun and Pluto. In a woman's chart, it can indicate her attracting a lot of controlling, manipulative, and abusive men. And, and it can even signal kids, your children, the way you handle your children as well. So, I mean, that's a very intense, like a very challenging aspect. His Uranus is actually conjoined to his Pluto in the sign of Virgo, which can deal with somebody who feels so underappreciated that they will do almost anything to prove their point. They will almost do anything to liberate themselves. These people can be super chaotic because it's a sense of like rebelliousness on crack. Okay, Uranus is all about rebellion. It's all about individuality, being unique. It co-rules Aquarius, so it could even deal with friends, large collectives of society. These people are so, I think these people with Uranus and harsh aspects to Pluto, especially in Virgo, tend to be people in the background, all right? Because Virgo is the sign of service. These people are in the background. These people are helping things, like I said, drum along like a well-oiled machine, just because Virgo is mechanically inclined, right? Virgo is the sign of service, everyday routine, things that keep the ship running smoothly. And a lot of times these people, especially just Virgo, the archetype Virgo, tends to feel like it gets the short end of the stick, or that it's underappreciated and even doubtful, and Virgo just as a sign doesn't belong in the streets. Like it just doesn't. And Virgo is not a street savvy kind of sign because it's so much more intellectually based. And a lot of times these people can end up just being downright reckless and self-destructive in order to prove a point, which more than likely will never really be made, or other people are never going to get, or you know what I'm saying, the way that you want them to. You're just going to end up putting yourself in fucked up situations, life changing situations, transformative situations. That's that Pluto thing, right? So, and I think that in Mr. Martinez's case, Alpo, him being, there had to be an element of jealousy, you know, or just an element of feeling like maybe he was the better guy, the better person amongst his coworkers and fellow drug dealers. And perhaps, you know, if I was in charge of A, B, C, and D, I can get a lot more done. Him spending a lot of his time just being, like I said, over the top and extreme and just downright unpredictable and just a wild liability in order to try and kind of prove that point and kind of overcompensate for a weakness or insecurity that he felt. And I mean, you see where that landed him. You see where that got him. So it could have very well been about money. But just from this aspect alone, like on some level, he had to have been unsatisfied or dissatisfied with his purpose in the organization. His Sun and Mars are squaring his ascendant. So yeah, that gave him, and it sounds like, especially after watching the movie, that he marinated in a lot of those dark-sided Gemini traits, right? He was known for being unpredictable. He was known for being even cruel. Like I said, cruelty is one of those dark side Gemini traits. Also, somebody who it seemed was very he got off on doing like fucked up shit to people. And like I said, not only can Gemini be cruel, but when Gemini gets bored, Gemini can just start shit and just start doing shit, kicking up shit just for the fun of it. Okay. And he does seem like he reflected a lot of those behaviors, and that in turn, it gained him a lot of enemies. He got a lot of enemies because of it. So there's that. He's a Aquarius moon, which isn't surprising because, Aquarius deals with friendships, like I said, organizations, collective organizations. So if you're a part of any type of drug ring, drug cartel operation, all of that is inclusive of like that 11th house energy signature, okay? And his moon is actually forming a square to his Neptune. So this points toward, and his Neptune is conjoined to his South Node in Scorpio. So, oh Lord have mercy. So this could definitely make somebody who is a criminal, somebody who's plugged into the criminal life, who's openly known to be plugged into the criminal life, as you have your moon dealing with your career or your reputation. And then with that Neptune element, it's definitely drugs. So this could absolutely point to somebody involved in like a drug cartel kind of thing. Scorpio is the sign of criminal activity. Neptune is the planet of drugs. And everything about that Scorpio South Node, like I always say, is one of the more challenging South Nodes out there because it brings out some very dark-sided scorpionic traits a lot of people tend to have, or experience those themes. So these people can be victims of sexual abuse. These people can definitely be plagued by demons because Scorpio it exists on like the Astro realm, and the Astro realm is where a lot of the demons and like darker entities hang out. So a lot of these people, if they aren't evolved, let me say that, if they're not really evolved Scorpio South Nodes or people who really have knowledge of self, they can absolutely be just like a jungle gym for demonic entities, demonic possession. all that stuff. And the possession isn't what you see on TV, like, you know, the lady with her head spinning around in the bed. It can literally be in a moment where you're not really operating off of based out of your true nature, your thoughts and emotions kind of being hijacked by an outside force, influences to think certain things, do certain things. And it's really, like I said, that Scorpio energy is all about that. And Scorpio South Node people actually come from past lives of being very prominent and powerful. Therefore, in this lifetime, they have this sense of entitlement, almost to just, I mean, wealth, whatever they want, really. And so they end up manipulating people. If the unevolved Scorpio South Node, rather, goes on to manipulate people, and this could be through sex, this could be through, you know, I mean, any medium, to get whatever it is that they want. And because they have their North Node in the opposite sign of Taurus, these people have to learn to work for the things that they want, right? And, you know, financial security is probably something that's very important to them. But it takes, when they're earlier in life, like early on in life, it tends to take second seat to that need or that desire for power, that desire for even chaos on a subconscious level. So all in all, Scorpio South Nodes need to be able to conform. Taurus is the sign of conformity. Conform to societal standards, be on the straight and narrow, kind of do whatever it is that they were put here to do. But like I said, just kind of turning down that notch on the need to like manipulate different things in order to get to where you want to be, or feeding into those very low vibrational desires. Okay, so there's that. And then his Venus is actually at the 9th degree of Taurus, and it is forming a trine towards his ascendant, which makes him, like I said, money motivated. Like, he was pretty much money driven. He was power hungry, but he was definitely very much about his money, as Taurus is the natural second house of the chart, which rules money, finances, values, riches. So he could have been a very indulgent person. I'm thinking of that scene in the movie where they were like eating in the room. They had just got done counting up their money for the night, and they're eating that Chinese takeout, and he was eating all the ribs and all the fried rice. Taurus is the sign of food. Well, one of them. Cancer is another one. More so like a chef, while Taurus is like the baker. But Taurus can still very much be associated with food because of that Venus element, that luxury, indulgence, fine food, fine cuisines, fine art, right? Everything that's encapsulated by that Venus. So yes, Martinez was absolutely materialistic in every sense of the word. Also, Taurus is known to be very much stubborn and resistant to change because it's a fixed sign. So with his Venus forming a square to his Pluto and Uranus, this could deal with him actually having a hard time even getting along with co-workers, the people he interacted with every day. That's represented with that Virgo being the natural ruler of the 6th house, right? So this aspect could absolutely point towards him making enemies in the workplace and even amongst friends, as Uranus does point towards friends and collective groups also. So, and to see that he's a Sun square Neptune is very much, it's very fitting. It represents him being in the witness protection program for one, especially with his Neptune being in Scorpio, because it's all about like illusion, right? Conspiracy, a change to your identity, especially with that Gemini, because Gemini represents names. Okay, Gemini is the natural ruler of the 3rd house. That 3rd house can deal with names, like nicknames. So when she put Neptune or add Neptune to it. These can be people who go by different names or change their names. And so this could absolutely point towards him being in the identity program. But then also there's this element of narcotics that's present with that Neptune. And like I said, with that being conjoined to his South Node, this could denote a person, of course, who is making money, or somebody who is involved in the drug game, somebody who is involved with criminal activity. Now, his Mars is at the 7th degree of Gemini. His Jupiter is at the 7th degree of Cancer. So he has that like solid number 7 energy in his chart. And number 7 deals with, like, it's a very Neptunian kind of number. So yeah, it can reinforce him being in the dope game. But then there's also this element, especially with his Mars. I'm wondering if this could have even manifested in him, like having like a split personality or some type of personality disorder. And also his Mercury is conjoined to his Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. And this aspect can point towards him being just an outright asshole, like somebody who was very full of themselves. Okay, Cancer is already a self-absorbed sign, as is, also cheap as well. But then when you add that Mercury and Jupiter, it can create somebody who is like narcissistic, somebody who's especially, I mean, Cancer is so incapable of being objective. Okay, it's a sign that's purely run on its emotions. It's a water sign. It's it's a cardinal sign, initiating and creating new ways of thinking, feeling, being. So Mercury Cancer people can be just completely emotional, like emotional high messes, and that's just the honest truth. And so with that being conjoined to his Jupiter, he could have been the type of person to talk ad nauseum about himself. And I mean, ironically enough, I think in the Wikipedia article it said he killed somebody for talking too much and bragging. But this aspect can make somebody go about doing the same thing. You feel me? Like bragging, telling stories. I mean, Mercury conjunct Jupiter makes for an amazing storyteller. Also, quick little interesting side note, his Venus is conjoined to the fixed star Hamal, which can produce somebody who is very handsome, which interestingly enough, he was fine. I'm not gonna lie. But then also somebody who is very envious, okay? Jealous, easily jealous of the people around them. So when you take into consideration that harsh aspect his Venus makes with his Pluto and his Uranus, this could absolutely represent him killing a friend. And then with his Moon forming a quincunx to his Pluto, I mean, you can see him being a very controlling individual, somebody who's a bully, that dark-sided Aquarian energy, somebody who even is a vampire, who attaches themselves to groups of people and literally drains and sucks the life out of that group of people for their own benefit, aka what he did with his business partners. And that could have been very reflective of how he navigated the dope game. So yeah, I didn't want to make this video too long, but I thought it would be very interesting to end 420 on that note. And until next time, y'all make sure you practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And as always, I holla.